perception and communication. Who are you? What is it about you that makes you unique? And how do you even know who you are? So, my name is Dana, and I'm an interpersonal communications student, and while learning, I was fascinated by the nature of self and self-perception and its specific effects on how we communicate with others. So, how you perceive and understand yourself really does play a role in how you communicate with others. I think we can all agree on that. When you have a clear perception of self and a clear understanding of how others perceive you, it can really help you effectively communicate your point across. So when we are communicating, we're often full of fears and doubts and hopes, but if we recognize and have that clarity in self-concept, self-awareness, and self-esteem, it is all vital really to become a well-rounded communicator. So in my pastime, I love to people watch. It's really interesting to me to see people's expressions and their postures and just their facial expressions. It's not hard to tell if they're happy, if they're sad, if they're agitated, if they're mad, if they're bored. So we're often living in the moment, and you can really get lost and not realize what messages you're portraying. So that comes with the importance of self-awareness. And self-awareness is just the conscious knowledge of your thoughts and feelings. And you can practice self-awareness in two different ways, usually two different ways, by social comparison and critical self-reflection. So social comparison is just basically just comparing yourself to people around you. You can do it in a positive or negative way. Obviously, it can be bad to negatively compare yourself to others, and that can really do some damaging effects to your self-esteem. And I'm going to touch on that point later as well. And you can also practice self-awareness by critical self-reflection. And that is just asking yourself probing questions. So you're asking, how am I portraying myself? What am I saying? How am I saying it? What do I look like? What are my expressions? So that's definitely another way to practice that. So self-awareness focuses on assessing your thoughts and feelings, while your self-concept is basically your overall evaluation of yourself. It's kind of in three different categories, and it's your values, your beliefs, and your attitudes. Your values being, they highlight what you stand for, and your beliefs are your convictions and assumed truths, and your attitudes are already pre-established thoughts and feelings about someone or something. Now, while your self-concept is based on these three things, if you have a solid understanding and clarity of your own self-concept, that most definitely correlates with high self-esteem. And so your self-esteem is what we perceive that is valuable about ourselves and what is worthwhile about ourselves. Positive self-esteem correlates with a well-articulated perception of yourself. And the negative self-esteem, a low self-esteem, is obviously going to be the opposite. So in 1987, a researcher named Tori Higgins presented the self-discrepancy theory. So that basically means that there are two domains of self-perception, one being the ideal self and one being the ought self. Ideal being what kind of person you want to be and what qualities you wish to possess. And your ought self being how you think others would like you to be. So, in this day and age, we are in a vastly wide communicating world where we can communicate online, face-to-face, so many different things, so many complications. It can be really complex. So, with all these new challenges, I think it's really important to build a solid personal foundation, and you can build that foundation on the basis of your self-awareness, your self-concept, and your self-esteem. How we perceive ourselves and how we practice those three things can really, really play a vital role in how you are effectively communicating with the other people around you. So take pride in your identity as well, and ultimately you must be aware of all the messages you're sending and not only the intended ones. And thank you for listening.